Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Ankle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, because I felt like it, I'm doing the debut album from Disclosure, Settle. So I did say that I wanted to cover debut albums from artists I've covered sophomore albums from and that sort of thing. And I plan on seeing this through. I have like 4 or 5 albums that I want to cover, probably not going to tackle all of them in a row, because I do still have to get on the Chemical Brothers. But, you know, you will see this kind of thing in the near future on this channel, so you can look forward to that. So let's start that up, shall we? Let's talk about Disclosure. Producer brothers Guy and Howard Lawrence. Yeah, remember when these guys were relevant? I'm worried this isn't exactly the best timing you could have to discuss these guys, given how they haven't done anything in over a year. Last thing they did as of recording this was their Mook for Love EP, which was pretty good. Though perhaps because of this, I never hear anyone talking about them anymore. In fact, since their second album, Caracol, kinda sorta flopped and showed fans nothing really new or boundary pushing, even though, as I said in my review, I still liked it. I saw them kinda slowly disappear from popular consciousness as early as the end of that year. The main reason I've been thinking of this at all is because I was in the middle of writing out a review of a particularly intense new album from Coma Duster that I have a feeling that not many people are going to watch. And I needed a break, and I needed to listen to something more simplistic and subtle and something that didn't require a lot of brain usage. So I'll just get right into it. These guys are one of the biggest 180s I've ever pulled on any band or artist. When I first heard Settle back in 2014, quite a bit before starting out my reviews, but I still kind of had the idea in my head that it was something I should do. So I wanted to catch up on some of the stuff that was popular, and my first impression of Settle was that of pretty major disappointment. Thought these guys were really overhyped and not nearly as unique as people were making them out to be. I mean, I already had, like, Cascade and Sounds from the Ground occupying similar spaces in my life at the time, so I didn't feel like I had any room for Disclosure. Especially considering these guys would never make any instrumental tracks. Some talent, huh? But ironically, after Caracol came out and got kind of an immediate backlash, I started to get it a little more. First of all, I think it's always helpful to think of things from mainstream context whenever one of these new producers pops up. Disclosure do definitely have their own style and niche within the world of electronic music, and I do still hear their influence pop up in other new popular acts. I've seen these guys described as garage house, UK garage, and dubstep before. I really don't know if I can qualify the latter, even knowing more of the full scope of what that term could mean. And I have seen my fair share of people pissed off at their contributions to the second genre. I'm no expert on UK garage or any of that kind of stuff, so, you know, don't quote me on any of this as per usual. But the term that most readily comes to mind whenever I think of these guys is deep house. I'm preparing for the inevitable angry commenters that go nuts anytime you use any remotely inaccurate genre terminology, though I'm 90% sure this term is a suitable description for their sound. And I'm not saying they invented deep house or anything, but like they did kind of start up a trend in the EDM world that made people want to try out this cleaner, more polished, and classier brand of house music. Like, they finally got Calvin Harris to stop sucking momentarily. Even Knife Party took the piss out of them once on their track EDM Train Machine. And for real, I don't care about what specific terminology you use to describe Disclosure's music. This kind of thing only ever gives me a headache, and that kind of thing misses the whole point of my covering this now. I may have also thought these guys to be derivative and overhyped at first, but as time went on, these guys slowly found a specific spot in my life that I could fit them in, and I still pop them on from time to time. Settle, I think, is a good name for this album. It's not something that super gets my blood pumping or hyped up, but it is good if I want to hear something more subtle, that still has a solid dance groove, you know, the kind of thing that gets my head bobbing but also works fine as background music, the kind of thing that is nice to settle down to, at least compared to the much more intense stuff you see in EDM circles. And there's a nice variety here. You got some popular vocal tracks and some other tracks that also focus on samples that I guess count as instrumentals enough. Like, there's energetic stuff and more subtle stuff, and to be honest, I don't think there's any bad tracks on this album at all. The whole thing has gotten a little better nearly every time I've heard it, and it's gone from being below average to actually pretty great. So as far as the poppier stuff goes, we obviously have to talk about the big hit on here, Latch, which was the only track on here I really liked right from the get-go. Of course, ever since Sam Smith made that terrible James Bond theme, you don't really hear from him nowadays, but this is still probably my favorite track I've heard him on. And while I enjoy his vocal performance, I enjoy the track more for Disclosure's production. Mainly that one bridge section with all the synth arpeggios. You know exactly the one I'm talking about. The poppier tracks were initially the ones that most easily grew on me, like the peppier White Noise featuring Luna George, and the more subtle but still soulful You and Me with Eliza Doolittle, and vibe-heavy Defeated No More with Ed McFarlane, which maybe goes on a bit too long for its own good, but, you know, it doesn't always bother me. Also January with Jamie Woon, which never really stuck out to me that much, but is still an enjoyable track in its own right. But my favorite of the poppier tracks goes to either Voices with Sasha Keeble, or the album closer, Help Me Lose My Mind with London Grammar. I don't really know what it is about Voices that particularly appeals to me, but I think it's mainly just that echoey pre-chorus that really gives off this sort of mysterious vibe. You bring out the darker side of me. That part. Followed by the actual chorus, which is a lot more energetic, and I'm not going to imitate because you know me and my falsetto voice. But whatever. Good song. Help Me Lose My Mind, of course, appeals to me, given how I'll always enjoy a good chill-out track, and this one does very nicely work as a cool-down for the end of the album, and leaves everything out on a refreshing note. If there is any, you know, actual pop track on here that I might take issue with, it may be F for You, which, for those of you who haven't heard this track yet, will know it is not as dirty as it sounds from the title. F just stands for fool, and was kind of a dumb bait and switch I never really saw the point of. Not that fuck for you would have made any sense either. Also, it's really repetitive and wears out on me fairly quickly, but it is still a good track though. I don't skip it, and the alternate version on the deluxe version of this album with Mary J. Blige on it is a noticeable improvement, so yeah. Now, of course, if this entire album were just poppier material, it'd still be fine, but it wouldn't be quite as engaging a listen. Looking at you, Caracol. But there thankfully are more than a couple of more interesting and non-poppy tracks on this thing that help provide more variety and make for a more engaging listen. When a Fire Starts to Burn was irritatingly repetitive at first, but has grown on me a lot, on the merits of being a pretty weird track that utilizes the vocals of motivational speaker Eric Thomas, and some pretty jumpy synth melodies. I think it, alongside Latch right after it, make for quite the engaging opening that really help hook the listener in, and other non-poppy tracks. There's one track on here that has a vocal guest, but I can't actually call poppy in any way, that being Confess to Me, featuring Jessie Ware. That song just sounds particularly weird. The synths that back up the vocals are pretty atonal, and it's really doesn't sound like it's meant to sound nice like a lot of the other ones on here. But as I said, makes for good variety. I like it. Stimulation is another particularly energetic track, kind of a more straightforward house thing, and Grabha is kind of like When a Fire Starts to Burn again, but with, you know, weirder synth progressions and also less vocals. Probably the closest we get to a straight instrumental track on this album. But I do also have to give special mention to Second Chance, which is kind of a chill interlude track that chops up the vocals of Khalees and pitch shifts them a ton. Another weird sounding track, but also one that brings the tempo down, and I'm always happy to hear a track in a dance album that gives you a break. So, you know, I very much appreciate that track's inclusion, one of my favorites for sure. Meanwhile, you look at Caracol, and the only thing that album really has as a break from its long lineup of vocal tracks is Bang That on the deluxe version, which, you know, does work. I very much like that track just because of its breaking the mold. But it's stuff like this that makes me kind of wish that Disclosure would move away from poppier stuff and try making a more experimental sounding album. I think they have something like that in them, and it could work really well from the various other tracks I've heard from them. I mean, I won't be holding my breath for it. In fact, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if album 3 is basically just more of the same again. But I really hope they don't do that. If Settle is anything to go by, is that these guys are capable of making some creative dance pop that's never too overbearing. They have plenty of cool ideas, and this album has enough of them to justify the many repeat listens I've given it over the years. And while it did take me about 1.5 years to really grow on me, Now Disclosure are a name that I will be looking forward to seeing in the mainstream here on out. And even if Caracol did kind of make me worried for their future, I'll still be looking forward to seeing whatever these guys do next. And on Settle, I am overall feeling a solid 8 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.